Problems continue in Whitechapel. Stepney Way is closed in both directions because of an ongoing investigation. On the Underground, there are now minor delays on the Hammersmith and City line.
This is LBC. Ferrari now 0345 6060 973 LBC.
The latest government
Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
10 minutes before 8 is the time. We'll come back to our conversation about the pay for nurses and, of course, the Buckingham Palace seeking to address privately the ongoing royal row, but to other matters. Writing in one of the newspapers today, the Daily Telegraph, not surprisingly, because of course I remind you he was a columnist there for some time, the Prime Minister talks about the need to connect Britain. It's time to begin to strengthen the very sinews, says Boris Johnson, the musculoskeletal structure, if I've got that right, of the United Kingdom, to put some flesh on the bones of that skeletal structure. I'm joined by Transport Secretary Grant Shapps. Good to welcome you on, Secretary of State. OK, what is the Prime Minister speaking of in a little more detail? Good morning.
Good morning. Well, there is a report, an interim report out this morning called the Union Connectivity Review. This is a report which looks at the way that the whole of the UK connects together. England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. How do those rail, roads, air connections, maritime connections, how do they work? Or do they work? And where they don't, why don't we do something about it? Something which shouldn't be a controversial thought is it ought to be easier to get around our country. And that's what this report is looking at, trying to achieve. And this is the interim version, with the final version out in the summer.
OK, so what sort of connectivity might we be talking about? What might happen as a result of this, Secretary of State?
Well, to give you some examples, for example, anyone who travels over to Wales, or maybe in Wales and travelling the other way, will know that the M4 and around there gets very constricted on the Welsh side. There have been plans for an M4 relief road there. The Welsh government's brought out something called the Burns Commission, which looked at different solutions for that. We'd like to help with it. Further up the country, you've got connectivity of things like rail up to Scotland, trying to, what if we could get a journey to London to Glasgow or Edinburgh in less than 3 hours? How much better would we be connected? There's a road in Scotland, the A75, which is single carriageway, but actually carries a large amount of the traffic for hauliers, the lorry drivers from Northern Ireland to England and across to Europe. Actually, what about upgrading that road? So lots of different ways to improve our connections. Friends and family, we're all looking forward to being able to get out and see each other again, make it easier for people to get around, but of course also to get freight around and goods around our country. So lots of different ideas contained within those and many others. OK,
and one idea might be apparently a tunnel between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, a fixed connection, it says. So it could be a tunnel, could be a bridge. Rather like we have a tunnel to continental Europe, actually, when you think about it, it's slightly odd that we're not physically connected for all parts of the United Kingdom, of which Northern Ireland is one of its 4 constituent parts. So there'll be a review, a study undertaken. Again, this will report back in the summer into the practicality of having a fixed connection, which would most likely run between the shortest distance, which is between Scotland and Northern Ireland. And
what sort of distance are we talking about there, Mr.
It's about 35, 40 kilometres.
Really? Sorry, when I do miles, I'm very old-fashioned. When I'm driving my car, Mr. Shapps, I always keep an eye that I don't do 70 miles on a motorway. I don't do it in kilometres. Clearly you do. But we'll talk motorways more in a moment. What would that be in miles?
Here, Nick, I'm always ticking off my own department for slipping into kilometres, and you're quite right to pull me up on it. So, look, it's about the same distance as the Channel Tunnel.
Right.
That's the answer. A little bit longer, depending on which route you take.
All right. Some of my listeners, lastly on this subject, might have a bit of doubt about whether the Prime Minister could actually pull this off. He wasted £43 million on a garden bridge in London. Not a single brick was ever laid. Why should we have confidence in him trying to be... He's hardly Bob the Builder, is he?
Well, just to be clear, the bridge was cancelled by the current mayor, Sadiq Khan, who is the person responsible, therefore, for wasting...
You would have gone ahead with it, Mr. Shapps?
Yeah, absolutely.
You would have gone ahead with the garden bridge?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know why people are against things which are ambitious for our country. And I just don't see why that should be. If we want to build, we're post-Brexit now, we've got the ability to go out there in the world. We've shown with our ability to roll out the vaccines to 43% of the adult population so far and rolling. When we go out and we do things on our own, we can be perfectly successful. Why would we not be ambitious enough to think, having built a tunnel between here and continental Europe, that we can't build a tunnel that connects our own country together? I don't see anything controversial about that at all.
The Test and Trace scheme was ambitious. It's taken £23 billion so far, more to come, and yet it's made no measurable difference. You've got me on distance there. No measurable difference, according to a panel of MPs. If we're talking wasting money, this is a classic example. It was a failure, a shambles, wasn't it, Mr. Shapps?
Extraordinary report by the Labour chair of that select committee this morning. Here's some facts. 9.1 million people who would have otherwise been wandering around with the virus have been contacted by Test and Trace. Imagine if they hadn't been. 93.3%, so over 93% of people, even where contact details for the people they've been in contact with weren't given, have been contacted by the service. Yesterday alone, over 1.5 million people got a coronavirus test, including all those school children, including my school children. My twins who are at school got a coronavirus test. in order to ensure that they're not spreading this around. The idea that somehow none of this makes any difference is, of course, complete nonsense. And another very good example would be with these variants, where we've got the South African variant, I think 285 cases. The Brazilian variant, 6 cases. If we hadn't had test and trace, then those cases, those variants, those mutations could be running wild.
You rightly note that Meg Hillier is the chair, so you think that this is politically motivated here, Secretary of State?
Well, look, I'm not. I don't know, but I merely point out that the chair is Meg Hillier, happens to be a Labour MP, a very distinguished Labour MP. But the idea that you come out and say contacting 9.1 million people and asking people to self-isolate, that none of that was made a difference. Just, anyone puts their sensible head on, they know that can't be true.
A couple of other matters while I have the benefit of you on the line. One of your other colleagues, Lord Bethell, has said of nurses' pay rise of 1%, he says it's about right and they're in jobs, secure jobs, so they should be thankful for that. Do you concur?
Well, first of all, I think they've done an absolutely stunning job. I know it was on before. I told you my dad was in hospital 3 months now. He's actually got out to rehab now. But I've been speaking to doctors and nurses every single day. They have done an incredible job. Whatever the pay rise is this year, they will get a pay rise on top of, for example, on top of for newly qualified nurses, 12% over the last 3 years. Junior doctors, 8.2% over the last 3 years. I think what Lord Bethell was saying was, unfortunately, sadly, because of this coronavirus, we know that 700,000 people have lost their jobs. Millions more are on furlough and have an uncertain future. Lots of other public sector workers in every other realm of the public sector who've done phenomenal jobs during this time, including our teachers, our police.
So
key workers,
you do agree with
key workers are getting freezes. So I'm very pleased that there will be a pay rise for doctors, nurses rather. Of course, we'd all love it to be bigger. We've got a lot of competing pressures going on now with an economy that's shrunk by 10%.
Newly qualified nurse earning around £26,000, pun times a 10-hour shift. Would you do that for £26,000 a year?
I just as a lot of people say to me, Mr. Shapps, I would never do your job as a cabinet minister or MP or whatever. I have so much admiration for doctors. So you do agree with nurses. I think I would struggle to do their job. They are unbelievable people. I've had a lot of contact with them this last few weeks. We've said, by the way, that we will get 50,000 more nurses, and we're already over 10,000 up just in the last year alone. So we're well on our way to the target. I think the average earn is 34,500.
That's once fully qualified. I did say starting out. Is that
and I'm pleased, as I say, there's been a 12% increase. There's going to be another increase, and it is at this time when, frankly, the economy is a lot smaller and a lot of people are losing their jobs. So it's about every government's got to make choices, and there's a balance, isn't there, Nick?
A couple of other things. Coming back to very much your brief as Transport Secretary, can we talk about smart motorways? I have another expression for them. You're probably aware that overnight another coroner, or in this instance an assistant coroner, in Luton and Bedfordshire, this is Tom Stote, has expressed concerns about these smart motorways. He joins Dr Alan Billings, who's the Crime Commissioner in South Yorkshire, Matthew Scott, the Kenton Police Crime Commissioner, who talks about legitimate concerns, and there are 2 other coroners. That's a total of 5 people. What are you going to do about these death traps, Mr. Shapps?
And actually, they add their voices to my voice. So as soon as I became Transport Secretary, I ordered an immediate stock-taken review of these things, which reported a year ago with 18 different points which required urgent attention. There's a report that will be on my desk this Friday describing where that stock takes up to, and I will be working to push, cajole, etc., Highways England, who are responsible for this network, to go further and faster in the measures that have been taken. One thing which is very interesting is I've been looking at the fatalities, as you rightly say, 39 on smart motorways between 2015 and 2019, and looking at the fatalities on non-smart motorways, 368 during the same period. What we need to do, in my view, is not just have smart motorways which are, as the report said last year, as safe in most but not always, it said. I want them to be the safest roads in the world, the safest places to be driving, and I'll do whatever's required to get there.
You're aware that in some instances the cameras aren't switched on, Secretary of State?
Yeah, I mean, but it's inexcusable. Look, there have been 9 there've been since smart motorways were invented in 2006. Tony Blair was still Prime Minister. There have been 9 different Secretaries of State for Transport. I think it's extraordinary that Highways England and their predecessor, which was the Highways Agency, built these things without radar control, without cameras switched on, without the red X, which closes lanes, actually being operational in terms of fines being issued, without educating people how to use these things, and many, many other points as well. And I'm absolutely determined we get on top of it.
OK, just a last couple of points. You were determined to sort out the problems in London with the Hammersmith Bridge and a ferry crossing. You said it would be in the new year, to be last year. The Commissioner of TfL, Andy Byford, a man I'm sure you know or know well, said it would probably now be the summer. So you got that wrong, Transport Secretary.
Yes, but I don't run that bridge. It's unbelievably frustrating. This bridge is owned by jointly TfL, Transport for London, and the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham.
But we're talking the ferry. We're talking the temporary ferry. So surely you can bang a desk there.
Yeah, so I have not only banged the desk, I've actually paid for the thing. I've given the money to TfL, and I'm urging them to get on with actually providing the service. They are the contractor for this, and I agree with you. It seems to be taking.
So you banged the desk, you paid the money. Surely you, like me, and the good folk of Hammersmith and Barnes and surrounding, when will it be? When will I be paying the ferryman?
Yeah, I understand from the same statement from the Commissioner of TfL, it will be this summer. And of course, like you, I'm asking the question, you got my money. We already said go ahead and commission it. What on earth is taking so long? But more wider than that as well, I want to see a solution to the whole of the Hammersmith Bridge thing. As I say, although I don't run that bridge, I don't own or operate that bridge, it is a major artery through London. I want to see it reopened. And there are all manner of sort of technical issues to be resolved. They just found a gas pipe that runs by one of the footings, which is yet another complication to resolving the issues. But I'm pushing them very, very hard. I'm pushing in particular the owner of the bridge, which is Hammersmith and Fulham Council, to give me a business plan. Let's work together and get the thing open again.
Last couple of points. Another of your senior Conservative colleagues, Zach now Lord Goldsmith, says of the royal issue, Harry is blowing up his family, quotes, what Meghan wants, Meghan gets. Are you in accord with that? And do you think the family can deal with this, quotes, privately, Secretary of State?
Look, I absolutely take the view that, and the long-standing convention that cabinet ministers do not comment on royal business, and I think that's absolutely right. We have a constitutional monarchy. Other than to say that I think that the Queen has done a phenomenal job. Next year's her platinum jubilee, of course, 70 years on the throne. But I do not want to get dragged into the family controversy, and I think that convention where cabinet ministers do not comment is a very good one.
All right, I'll drag you in lastly on this one then. Did Piers Morgan have to leave his job at ITV?
Well, my next interview, or next ones with GMB, I will miss the Piers Morgan show in the morning. Look,
I don't have plans to go anywhere currently anyway, so don't worry. You still look forward to me, Mr. Shapps.
Of course. I mean, my favourite interview. I mean, he was my second, obviously, but he was always controversial. Look, on the issue of mental health specifically, I think particularly actually during this pandemic, royalty aside, there's never been a more important time to focus on and recognise mental health as an issue. Just this week, we've given another 79 million to children's mental health. To try to do all we can to help people through this crisis. Because Piers Morgan always had this sort of slightly offhand interviewing approach. He was either loved or loathed for it. I'm sure the world will carry on with or without.
Good luck with your dad. I didn't know he'd been sick.
Thank you.
I hope he gets better. Grant Shapps, thank you for appearing here on LBC. 4 minutes after 8, news is next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock. A Metropolitan Police officer has been arrested in connection with the disappearance of Sarah Everard, who's been missing for a week in South London. The man was held at an address in Kent last night, a development described by Scotland Yard as shocking and deeply disturbing. A woman is also being questioned. Sarah, who's 33, was last seen when she left a friend's house in Clapham. Our senior reporter Matthew Thompson is there.
A police cordon remains in place around a block of flats here in Clapham, a missing poster of Sarah Everard fixed to the doors, but no sign yet of the forensic officers who were on site yesterday after the most significant development yet in the case last night, the arrest arrest of a serving Metropolitan Police officer.
The Queen has tried to draw a line under a series of allegations against the royal family made by Harry and Meghan in their Oprah Winfrey interview. A statement from Buckingham Palace says the claims, including of racism, are being taken very seriously, but it says they'll be dealt with privately by the royal family. MPs are criticising the test and trace system, saying there's no evidence it contributed to a drop in coronavirus cases. The programme cost £22 billion in its first year, and a further £15 billion was set aside for it in last week's budget. The Public Accounts Committee says the system needs to wean itself off reliance on expensive consultants. Labour's Meg Hillier chairs the group.
They haven't yet been able to